Ralph and Rob sat at their favorite bar, steadily working their way through enough drinks to make the bartender consider cutting them off. The night was going great, until Rob suddenly turned pale, clutched his stomach, and then, without warning, vomited all over himself. "Oh, no!" he groaned, staring at the mess on his shirt. "Jane's gonna kill me!" Ralph, the more experienced drinker of the two, smirked and patted his friend on the back. "Relax, buddy. Here's what you do. Stick a $20 bill in your breast pocket. And tell Jane some guy threw up on you and felt so bad about it, he gave you money for dry cleaning. She'll buy it." Rob's eyes lit up. "Ralph, you're a genius." With that problem apparently solved, they kept drinking for another couple of hours until Rob could barely stand. Eventually, he stumbled through the front door of his house, reeking of alcohol. Jane took one look at him and gasped, "Rob, you're disgusting. You stink like a brewery, and, oh my God, you threw up all over yourself." Rob, swaying slightly, put on his most serious face and carefully slurred, Now, wait a minute, Jane. I can't explain everything. This isn't my fault. Some other guy, he had too much to drink and he lost control. He felt real bad about it, so he gave me $20 for the cleaning." Jane squinted, suspicious. She reached into his breast pocket and pulled out the money. Then, her eyes narrowed. "Rob, there are $40 in here." Rob blinked, confused. Then, as if suddenly remembering, he sighed and mumbled, "Oh, yeah. He also shit in my pants." Late one night, a hopelessly drunk man staggered down the street, barely keeping his balance. Spotting a warm glow ahead, he grinned, his favorite corner bar. He pushed open the door and wobbled up to the counter. The bartender took one look at him and shook his head. "No way, buddy. You're too drunk. I'm not serving you." The drunk blinked, swayed slightly, then muttered, "Fine. Guess I'll go somewhere else." With great effort, he turned around and stumbled back onto the street. As he shuffled along the sidewalk, he noticed another entrance to the same bar. Just around the corner, determined, he straightened up, marched through the second door, and plopped onto a bar stool. The bartender sighed. "I just told you I'm not serving you. Get out." The drunk squinted, trying to focus. "Huh, weird." He scratched his head, then shrugged and stumbled back outside. As he turned another corner, he spotted yet another entrance. This had to be a different bar. What luck! Grinning, he pushed through the door, only to be greeted by the same bartender standing behind the counter. The drunk froze. His bloodshot eyes widened in horror. He stared at the bartender for a long moment, then gasped, "Good grief. Do you own every bar in town?" A bloke walked into a pub one evening, plopped himself onto a bar stool, and signaled the barman. "5 pots, mate," he said confidently. The barman glanced around. No mates in sight, just this one guy all on his own. But a paying customer was a paying customer, so he lined up 5 pots and slid them across the bar. Without hesitation, the bloke picked up the first glass and downed it, then the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, gone, like they'd never existed. The barman raised an eyebrow, but before he could say a word, the bloke smacked the counter. "4 more, mate." Shrugging, the barman poured another round. And again, the bloke powered through them. 1, 2, 3, 4. A loud belch escaped him as he swayed slightly, but his mission was far from over. He held up 3 fingers. 3 pot shots, please." Another round. Another rapid-fire demolition. 1, 2, 3. His speech slurring, he waved for more. 2 pot shots, mate." The barman sighed, served the drinks, and watched as they disappeared just as quickly. 1, 2. Finally, the bloke slumped forward and, with deep concentration, raised a single finger. "One pot, sir?" The barman poured the final beer, but this time, the bloke just sat there, staring at it. He tilted his head as if trying to solve a great mystery. After a long pause, he mumbled, "No, it's strange, but the less I drink, the drunker I feel." It was a slow afternoon at Cheers, and as usual, Cliff Clavin was perched at the bar, holding court with his latest Cliffy-ism. His buddy Norm, nursing his beer, listened with mild amusement as Cliff leaned in, ready to drop some wisdom. "Well, you see, Norm, it's like this," Cliff began, swirling his drink as if he were about to explain the mysteries of the universe. "A herd of buffalo can only move as fast as the slowest buffalo, right? And when predators come along, it's always the slowest, weakest ones at the back that get picked off first. This is actually good for the herd because over time, only the stronger, faster buffaloes survive. Makes the whole group better." Norm took a sip of his beer, nodding along. "Makes sense, I guess." Cliff smirked. "Now, apply that same logic to the human brain. Our brains can only work as fast as the slowest brain cells, right? And we know that alcohol kills brain cells. But here's the kicker. Beer doesn't just kill any brain cells. It goes after the slowest, weakest ones first." Norm raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "So," Cliff continued, straightening up like a professor concluding a great lecture, "by regularly consuming beer, we're actually weeding out the weaker brain cells. Over time, only the faster, smarter brain cells remain, making the brain a more efficient machine." He took a triumphant sip of his beer and grinned. "That's why you always feel smarter after a few drinks." A man walked into a bar, sat down, and waved over the bartender. "Bartender, give me 2 shots," he said. The bartender raised an eyebrow. "Do you want them both now, or one at a time?" "Oh, both now," the man replied. "One's for me, and one's for this little guy right here." With a grin, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny man, no more than 3 inches tall, and set him on the bar. The bartender blinked. "Wait, he can drink?" "Oh, sure," the man said. "He can drink." Shrugging, the bartender poured the shots, and to his astonishment, the tiny man picked up his glass and downed the liquor in one smooth gulp. The bartender whistled. "That's incredible. What else can he do? Can he walk?" The man smirked and flicked a quarter down to the end of the bar. "Hey, Jake, go grab that." Without hesitation, the tiny man sprinted across the bar, snatched up the quarter, and raced back, flipping it into his friend's palm. The bartender shook his head in disbelief. "This is insane." "What else?" "Can he talk?" The man chuckled and leaned in. "Oh, yeah, he talks." He turned to the little guy. "Hey, Jake, tell the bartender about that time we were in Africa, and you made fun of that witch doctor's powers." A man walked into a bar, settled onto a stool, and waved the bartender over. "Pour me a drink, before the trouble starts." The bartender raised an eyebrow but shrugged and poured the man a shot. Without hesitation, the man downed it in one gulp. "Another one," he said, "before the trouble starts." The bartender, now curious, poured a second. Once again, the man knocked it back like it was water. This went on for a few more rounds, each time the man repeating the same phrase. "Before the trouble starts?" Finally, the bartender leaned in, arms crossed. "All right, pal. You've had 5 drinks now, and all you keep talking about is some trouble starting. So tell me, when is this trouble supposed to start?" The man sighed, wiped his mouth, and gave a sheepish grin. "Oh, right about now, when you find out I don't have any money to pay for these drinks." A bloke walked into a pub, sat down at the bar, and slapped some cash on the counter. "5 pots, mate," he said. The barman glanced around. No mates in sight, just this one guy, but he wasn't about to turn down a sale. Shrugging, he poured the drinks and lined them up. Without hesitation, the bloke grabbed the first pot and downed it. Then the second. The third. The fourth. The fifth. The barman raised an eyebrow, but before he could say a word, the bloke wiped his mouth and grinned. "4 more! Mate!" Again the barman poured, and again the bloke powered through them. 1, 2, 3, 4. He let out a deep belch, swayed slightly, and smacked the counter. "3 more!" Another round, another demolition. 1, 2, 3. His voice slurred now. He held up 2 fingers. "2 pot shots, mate," the barman obliged, watching as the man knocked them back one after the other. Then came the final request, 1 last pot. The barman slid the drink over, but this time the bloke just stared at it. His eyes struggled to focus as he tilted his head in deep concentration. After a long pause, he muttered, "No, it's strange, but the less I drink, the drunker I feel." Billy Bob burst through the doors of his favorite bar, grinning from ear to ear. He marched up to the counter and slapped the bar with enthusiasm. "Bartender, 1 round for everyone, on me." The bar erupted in cheers as the bartender raised an eyebrow. "Well, well, someone's in a good mood tonight." Billy Bob beamed. "You bet I am. Just got me a brand new job with the city, gonna be going around collecting all the money from parking meters. I start Monday." The bartender chuckled, clapped him on the back, and poured the drinks. "Congratulations, Billy Bob! Here's to the new gig." The night went on, and Billy Bob basked in his celebration. Come Monday evening, the bar doors swung open once again, and in strolled Billy Bob, grinning even wider than before. "Bartender, 2 rounds for everyone, on me." The bartender's eyes widened. "2 rounds? You must be loving this job. I can only imagine how excited you'll be when you get your first paycheck." Billy Bob blinked, his grin faltering just slightly. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a fistful of quarters, and stared at them like he had just discovered treasure. "Wait a minute," he said slowly. "You mean they're gonna pay me too?" At a small-town bar, there was a long-standing challenge that no one had ever won. The owner, a burly, muscle-bound man, was so confident in his strength that he offered a $1,000 bet to anyone who could beat him. The challenge? Simple. The owner would take a fresh lemon, squeeze it until not a single drop of juice remained, and then hand the wrung-out fruit to the challenger. If they could squeeze even one more drop out, they'd walk away with the cash. Over the years, countless tough guys had tried, truck drivers, bodybuilders, lumberjacks, but none had ever managed to get a single extra drop. Then one evening, the bar doors swung open and in walked a small, frail-looking man. He wore thick-rimmed glasses, a neatly pressed suit, and carried a briefcase. He adjusted his spectacles and, in a soft voice, said, "I'd like to try the challenge." The bar erupted in laughter. The owner smirked. "Well, fair's fair," he said, grabbing a lemon. With his enormous hands, he crushed the fruit with all his might, twisting and squeezing until every last drop of juice filled the beer glass. Then, with a confident grin, he tossed the withered remains to the little man. The man calmly picked it up, adjusted his grip, and squeeze. 1 drop, then another and another. By the time he was done, 4 drops of lemon juice dripped onto the bar. The room fell silent. The owner, dumbfounded, handed over the prize money and finally asked, "Mate, what do you do for a living? You a lumberjack? A martial artist? Some kind of secret strongman?" The man tucked the cash neatly into his wallet and smiled. "Oh, nothing like that," he said. I work for the income tax department. A man walked into a bar, ordered a couple of beers, and enjoyed his drinks. When he was ready to leave, the bartender said, "That'll be $10. The customer furrowed his brow. "But I already paid you, don't you remember?" The bartender hesitated, then shrugged. "All right. If you say you paid, I suppose you did." The man left, grinning, and immediately told the first person he saw, "Hey, the bartender in there can't keep track of who's paid and who hasn't." The second man rushed inside, ordered 2 beers, drank them, and when the bill came, he pulled the same trick. "Didn't I already pay you?" The bartender sighed. "If you say you did, I suppose you did." The second man left and quickly spread the word. Soon, a third man eagerly hurried into the bar and started drinking highballs like there was no tomorrow. The bartender leaned in close, shaking his head. "You know, something funny happened tonight. 2 guys came in, drank their beers, swore they paid, and walked out without handing me a dime. The next guy who tries that stunt is getting punched right in the balls." The man barely looked up from his drink. "Hey, buddy, don't bother me with your troubles. Just give me my change, and I'll be on my way." The upscale Tex-Mex bar buzzed with life, its warm glow reflecting off the polished wooden counter. A stranger, dressed in a crisp suit but looking slightly out of place, watched as the bartender skillfully mixed drink after drink with a practiced hand. Curious, the stranger leaned in. "What's that drink you're making?" he asked. The bartender, a wiry man with a thick Texan drawl and a twinkle in his eye, grinned as he poured the concoction into shot glasses. "I call it a Lil Texas shooter," he said, sliding a few across the bar. The stranger eyed the drink suspiciously. "What's in it?" "Well now," the bartender said, wiping his hands on a towel. "Sugar, milk, and a good splash of rum." The man raised an eyebrow. "Is it any good?" The bartender chuckled. "Oh, you bet, senor. The sugar gives you pep. The milk gives you plenty of energy." The stranger nodded slowly. "And the rum?" The bartender leaned in with a knowing smile. "Hell, man! That gives you plenty of ideas on what to do with all that pep and energy." Laughter rippled through the bar as the stranger picked up the shot, shrugged, and knocked it back. The night was just getting started. It was a slow night at Murphy's bar. The bartender, Joe, was lazily polishing a glass when the door swung open. A man walked in, well-dressed, confident, but notably without arms. Joe straightened up as the man approached the bar and took a seat. "What'll it be?" "A whiskey." "Neat," the man said. Joe poured the drink and slid it over. The man gave an awkward smile. I don't have any arms. Would you mind grabbing my wallet from my pocket and taking out some cash?" Joe hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, no problem." He reached in, pulled out a few bills, and set them in the register. The man nodded. "Thanks now. Could you tip the glass to my lips?" Joe sighed but obliged, carefully tilting the glass while the man took small sips. This process repeated until the whiskey was gone. "Appreciate that," the man said, smacking his lips. "Now, could you grab a hanky from my pocket and wipe the foam off my mouth?" Joe chuckled, but did as asked. "Must be tough, having to rely on people for everything." The man sighed. "Yeah, it can be a bit embarrassing sometimes." "Oh, by the way, where's your restroom?" Joe blinked. Then, with a quick smile, he replied, "The closest one is in the gas station 3 blocks down the street." It was a quiet evening at O'Malley's Tavern when a well-dressed, well-traveled man strolled in and took a seat at the bar. He flashed a confident smile at the bartender and pulled a crisp $50 bill from his pocket. "For $50, he said, sliding the bill across the counter. "You can mix any cocktail you like, without my knowledge, and I'll tell you exactly what's in it." The bartender raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "Dead serious," the man replied. Never one to back down from a challenge, the bartender got to work, pouring an odd mix of liquors and sodas into a shaker. He slid the finished drink across the bar. The man took a slow sip, swished it around like a seasoned sommelier, then smirked. "Vanilla vodka, Canadian whiskey and casas, and Diet Coke." The bartender's jaw dropped. "That's exactly right." Determined to stump him, he mixed another bizarre concoction. The man took another sip, then nodded. "Puerto Rican rum tab, Dr. Pepper, and gin." The bartender stared in disbelief. This continued for several rounds, and by now the bartender had lost a good bit of money. He rubbed his chin, realizing he needed a plan. Finally, he leaned in. "All right, one last round. If I make a drink you can't identify, you owe me back all the money I lost." The man grinned. "Deal." The bartender poured a glass of tap water and slid it over. The man took a sip. His confident expression faltered. He smacked his lips, took another sip, then frowned. "By golly, you've done it," he admitted, shaking his head. "I have no idea what this is." He set the glass down and chuckled. "But I can tell you one thing, whatever it is, it won't sell." It was a slow evening at Charlie's Tavern when a man strolled in, took a seat at the bar, and ordered a couple of beers. He drank leisurely, enjoying the dim glow of the neon signs and the low hum of the jukebox in the corner. After finishing his drinks, he reached for his coat when the bartender, Charlie, gave him a nod. "That'll be $10. The man furrowed his brow. $10? But I already paid you, don't you remember?" Charlie hesitated, scratching his head. He was sure the man hadn't paid, but business had been slow, and he didn't want to start an argument over $10. With a sigh, he waved the man off. "All right. If you say you paid, then I suppose you did." The man gave a sly grin and strolled outside, where he spotted another fellow lingering near the entrance. "Hey, buddy," he said, chuckling. "That bartender can't remember who paid or not. I just had 2 beers for free." The second man's eyes lit up. He hurried inside, ordered a couple of beers, and when the tab came, he used the same trick. $10, Charlie said. "I already paid you," the man insisted. Charlie exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. Something didn't feel right, but once again he let it slide. "All right. If you say you paid, then I suppose you did." Grinning, the second man walked outside and passed the trick along to another friend. Before long, a third man burst into the bar, this time ordering fancy highballs. He drank with gusto, knowing his drinks would be free. As he raised his glass for another sip, Charlie leaned across the counter, his patience wearing thin. "You know," he said in a low voice, "a funny thing happened tonight. 2 guys walked in, drank beer, and both claimed they already paid. Now, the next guy who tries that stunt is going to get punched square in the balls." Before Charlie could finish, the man cut him off with a dismissive wave. Hey, don't bother me with your troubles. Just give me my change and I'll be on my way." In class, the teacher asked the students, "What does your mother do for a living?" One girl proudly said, "My mom is a doctor." Another chimed in, "My mom is an engineer." Then it was little Johnny's turn. He stood up and confidently said, "My mom's a streetwalker." The classroom fell silent. The teacher's face turned red, and she immediately sent Johnny to the principal's office. 15 minutes later, Johnny returned, looking completely unfazed. The teacher, still flustered, asked, "Did you tell the principal what you said in class?" Johnny nodded. "Yep." "And what did the principal say?" Johnny smirked. "He said every job is important to the economy, gave me an apple, and asked for my mom's phone number." The upscale Tex-Mex bar buzzed with a warm, easygoing energy. A stranger leaned against the polished counter, watching as the bartender expertly mixed drinks, his hands moving with the confidence of a man who had poured 1,000 cocktails before. Curious, the stranger nodded toward the drink being prepared. "What's that you're mixing?" The bartender grinned and kept shaking the metal tin. "I call it a Lil Texas Shooter," he said, pouring the frothy mixture into shot glasses. The stranger raised an eyebrow. "What's in it?" "Sugar, milk, and a good splash of rum," the bartender replied. The man smirked. "That's an interesting mix. Is it any good?" "Sure is, senor," the bartender said with a knowing smile. "The sugar gives you pep, the milk gives you plenty of energy." The stranger nodded along, waiting for the last ingredient's purpose. "And the rum?" The bartender leaned in, his grin widening. "Hell, man, that gives you plenty of ideas on what to do with all that pep and energy." Ever since Rob was a child, he had a deep-seated fear. Every night as he lay in bed, he was convinced that someone was hiding underneath, just waiting to grab him. No matter how much he tried to reason with himself, the fear never went away. One day, tired of sleepless nights, Rob decided to seek professional help. He made an appointment with a well-known psychiatrist and poured out his troubles. "Doctor, I think I'm going crazy. Every time I go to bed, I feel like someone is under it. I can't sleep. I can't relax. I'm at my wit's end." The psychiatrist nodded thoughtfully. "This is a common fear, but don't worry. If you come to see me 3 times a week for a year, we can work through this together." Rob hesitated. "And how much will that cost me?" $80 per session, the psychiatrist replied. Rob gulped. That was a hefty price to pay. "I'll think about it and let you know." 6 months later, Rob happened to run into the psychiatrist on the street. "You never came back for treatment," the doctor said. "How are you coping with your fear?" Rob grinned. "Oh, I'm doing great. And I saved a ton of money, too." The psychiatrist raised an eyebrow. "Really? And how did you manage that?" "Well," Rob said proudly, "I went to my local bar, and for just $10, the bartender gave me the perfect cure." "A bartender?" the psychiatrist scoffed. "And what miracle advice did he give you?" Rob shrugged. "He told me to cut the legs off my bed." Problem solved. Nobody under there now. It was just another night at the bar when the doors swung open, and in stumbled a well-dressed but obviously intoxicated man. His tie was crooked, his hair a mess, but his smile was wide and confident. "Bartender, a drink for everyone, a drink for me, and a drink for yourself!" He bellowed, waving his arms dramatically. The bartender, though skeptical, wasn't about to turn down a paying customer. He lined up the drinks, poured them out, and soon the entire bar erupted in cheers. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed. It was a great night. That is, until the bartender handed over the bill. The drunk gave a sheepish shrug. "Oh, I didn't bring my wallet with me tonight, sorry." Silence fell over the bar. The bartender's eye twitched. "You what?" Before the drunk could respond, the bartender leaped over the counter and proceeded to beat the living daylights out of him before tossing him out onto the street. The next night, business was as usual, until the same well-dressed, intoxicated man wobbled through the doors again. "Bartender, A drink for everyone, a drink for me, and a drink for yourself, he declared cheerfully. The bartender blinked in disbelief. This guy can't be that stupid, he thought. Maybe he had come to pay his dues. Maybe he felt guilty for the stunt he pulled last night. Feeling a little bad for how hard he'd hit him, the bartender sighed and decided to give him a chance. He poured the drinks, the bar cheered, and everyone drank. Then, as before, he handed the man the bill, and once again, the man shrugged. "Oh, I didn't bring my wallet with me again. Sorry." The bartender saw red. This time he didn't hold back. He pummeled the man even harder before kicking him out into the cold. On the third night, the bartender nearly dropped the glass he was cleaning when he saw the man stumble in once more. "Bartender, a drink for everyone and a drink for me," the man called out. The bartender narrowed his eyes. "Oh, I see what's happening here." He grinned, crossing his arms. "What? No drink for me tonight?" The drunk man wobbled, looked him dead in the eye, and slurred, "Nah, man. You get way too violent when you drink."